Oh, wait a minute.
No, now you're muted. Michael, you there? He just sent me an email saying that the other number didn't work, but he's trying this one.
The 816699?
No. He's not dialing.
Oh, 669-900-6823.
Yeah. He dialed into that. The meeting ID was wrong. So I just sent him an email back. It was 2 minutes ago. So let's just see if he.
Hey guys, it's Michael.
Michael, great to hear your voice.
Made it.
So now it being 7:03, we'll get the meeting started. I call the meeting to order. Michael, just so you know who is here, the people around the room, Courtney Lowe, Joe, Dina Talley, Julia Cook, myself, Charlie Kimball, what's your name again? John Spector and Sally Miller, and we have some members in the audience as well. So with that, we should begin our meeting. Okay. The first item, if you'll notice, Michael, I'm sorry you can't see this, but for the audience members here and for the folks at home, we actually are using new technology tonight where we're trying to actually film the meeting in round so we can see both the audience and the people at the table speaking. And we've projected onto the wall the agenda, and we'll also project onto the wall the different items that we're discussing. So with some of them, not some of them. Yes, the more scintillating ones will do. So with that, we have our regular session of citizen comments, if there are citizen comments to share. And if we will then move on to our next agenda item, which is the approval of minutes from December 6, 2018. You should have received the email from Sally that had the link to the Dropbox with the minutes in there from our previous meeting. Entertain a motion to approve those minutes as written.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion, any amendments to those minutes at all? Hearing none, we'll take a vote on the approval of those minutes. Because we have someone on the phone, we'll have to do it by voice. Michael, we'll go with you first. All those in favor, Michael, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Court?
Yes.
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 Okay, and that is our first item of business. Thank you. Our grant discussion, our discussion item is for community visioning. We've allocated 10 minutes. We'll see if we take more than that or less than that. So I think, Sally, are you representing this?
I am representing it. We have had a group of about 4 people that have worked on this for the last 5 or 6 months, I think. And we had 5 proposals that came in. And the group would like to recommend the community workshop. Folks up from there are actually in Bethel, I think. But they have done quite a bit of work in the area, and they are local folks. We like them because they have a toolbox of projects that they can use in the visioning, and they will work with the town to decide which of those tools are appropriate for our community. So we are asking that the EDC will approve a $25,000 allocation to hire the facilitator community workshop to do the community visioning project, which will start as soon as we get the okay from the select board.
So that could be in the form of a motion. We could motion, and we can have discussion after that motion is on the floor. Would somebody care to move what Sally just moved, which was to approve a grant of $25,000 to go to the community vision process? I'm sorry, the name of it is
Community workshop.
Community workshop.
I'll do that.
Barry would move that. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second, and Michael, Barry Millstone is now at the table as well. We have Michael Malik on the other.
Hey, Michael. Hope you're feeling better.
Hey Barry, thanks. Doing okay.
So now we have an opportunity to discuss the process. As we all know, we've talked about this for many months, and the group has come back. I have some questions, but before I do, does anybody else want to question Sally on?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Di Natale.
Who are you proposing to conduct this?
They will be the facilitator.
Who is they?
Community workshop, this group.
And they're what? An independent?
They are, this is what their business is to help communities facilitate various projects. So they have worked on town plan, they did the Bethel Better block, they've worked with the town of, I don't know if it's Richmond, but another
Richmond,
town in
yes.
the northern part of the state, as well as previous, one of their partners worked for the Orton Foundation and did some of their heart and soul projects as well.
You know, maybe 15 years ago, or maybe a little bit better than that, there was this, well, I'm going to ask you, how would it differ from what appears to me as be a very similar project that happened here?
Yes. It is similar.
You remember that one I'm
Yeah,
talking
part
about?
of it, very much part of it.
Yeah.
It is similar, but in this case, they've kind of taken another step forward, so they use technology, and they have as I said, they have a whole toolbox of other ways that they engage the community. And it will be up to, and we're already forming a group of people that want to be part of sort of the initial conversations of what we should be doing in our community to get this process to be effective and to
Okay,
have.
so I guess my question is, at the previous, how should I?
Community, I mean, it was a visioning process, yes.
Yeah, at the previous summit that was held, it was very well attended, if I remember correctly. We filled the elementary school gym. It was well organized, and there were ideas about what to do in the community, and then they were prioritized, similar to what Charlie did at one of our meetings with the
Yep.
college circles, and what do you think is the most, let us stop there.
No. it's-
So, wait a minute. So it didn't seem, nothing really seemed to materialize from that. I mean, because it was, Phil Camp and I were the ones who originally organized that from that Thursday morning meetings that we had. So, my question is, how will this company make something happen that didn't happen
So
last
I
time?
will disagree with you very respectfully, is that we actually had 4 working groups that came out of that session with VCRD, and they actually all had actions that happened as a result. So we had the town merger vote, which went to a vote, so there was a group of community members that worked on that for several months, and that went to a vote. We had a trails group, and they ended up forming I don't know if it was Woodstock or Woodstock Trails Partnership, so that came out of the VCRD visit. We had the East End group, which really didn't do much. They kind of left with their hands saying, like, we can't do anything. But what they did is they formed a base for what actually ended up being a lot of the work that's being done in the East End now. And the 4th group was called Community Identity, and I was actually the chairperson of that group. And that group went on to essentially be the founding for Sustainable Woodstock. So I think that there were some major things that actually came out of that process. And I think that Rebecca, knowing what she's done in Bethel, because I've been up to Bethel to see what she's doing up there, has very much that mindset and understanding communities and knowing that we expect to see some action out of this.
I will say that John and Sally and I met this past week to look at this proposal in a little bit of depth, and one of the things that we were very impressed by was her focus on on giving everyone a voice. She employs keypad polling so that the loudest voices don't drown out the quieter voices, kind of to democratize the process. We liked that a lot. But the notion that people who aren't necessarily on the boards, engaged in town steering, I guess, but who have opinions and who live here and work here and are engaged in the town, might also be able to, we might be able to hear their voices, bring them out into the public and use that to move forward. So I don't know that that fully addresses your
Well, that happened in the original one too, where
deliverables.
people got up and spoke and expressed their ideas about what should happen at that time,
Sure.
what should happen in town. So that sounds like it's pretty much similar to.
Yeah, I think it employs, she employs, as Sally said, certain technologies to further democratize the process and further encourage.
Would they initially present their process in terms of, well, this is the way it's gonna happen, this is the way it's gonna work, and then this is how we will implement anything that comes of this?
Well, actually, it starts with a conversation with community members about really the goals for the project.
And the format would be how, like was at the
It may
gym?
be something completely different. I think that's up to the visioning group to make that decision. And so, as I said, we've already, we had a meeting of the nonprofit network this morning, and there's already some nonprofit leaders that have volunteered to sort of take the next step and work with Rebecca to sort of put together the actual program for how it's going to work. And I think that if you want to be part of that conversation, we would love to have you to sort of voice your concerns and also to have any suggestions about how this moves forward. I think, Beth, you said you would do that.
So if I may suggest, their proposal is pretty detailed. For instance, to your point, each step of the way, they've really detailed in the proposal. Courtney's got their kickoff workshop. We'll provide a presentation on creative engagement and planning ideas, discuss engagement goals and values, identify target audiences, and discuss communication engagement strategies. So it's really, they have really, I think, thought it out pretty well in their presentation.
Kelly, I think, oh, sorry. I think there are two things that we could do I'm comfortable with their proposal. I did have a chance to look at it in a little bit more detail. I think there are two things that we could do, and I think in order to make sure or to maximize the chances that something comes of this.
That's my concern.
One is there's one very specific outcome that I think is really important to come out of this, and I think it can absolutely fit into their project. And I've talked about this with the committee and so forth, which is by the early fall, we need to understand the town's sense of priorities with respect to capital spending. And there are a half a dozen, 6 or 8. Jill has provided the visioning team with an initial list of what those might be: the sidewalks, the elementary, the high school, the EMS building, the town hall outside, the town hall inside, et cetera, et cetera. And there may be a few more. The timing is perfect for us to use this process to be able to go into the budgeting process for 2020 and basically say, these are the priorities. So that's one thing. I think it's tangible, it's clear. We need to tell them that has to be one of their end products, and I think they could achieve that. The second thing we could do, I think, is to make sure that we, the EDC, I think, we're the group, has a process for making sure that they know who the client is, and that if there are disagreements about what the direction should be, what should they emphasize, should they do more capital spending or more visioning or whatever, that there's some group, I don't know if it's us or if it's some subcommittee, but I think before we launch the project, within, in the next few weeks, we should decide what that process is, so that we don't, and I think if we do those two things, plus their proposal, I think there's a very good chance that there'll be real tangible outcome.
Barry, has a question?
Yeah, so I think we're not entirely starting from scratch. There are groups together now, and efforts underway that came out of the original visioning study. And I would like to see that an early part of this effort would be to inventory the groups, inventory the current activities, and that be kind of a starting point for, rather than starting fresh, what do we want to do, where do we want to go, is we're doing this now. How do we leverage what the efforts that are already underway?
Like the revitalization effort.
Like the revitalization effort,
right.
River Loop Trail, what
Right,
have you.
exactly.
The grants.
Point well taken.
I had one other thing.
Are there any, Courtney? Yes.
Yeah, just technical. I did notice $4,000 of that is 2020 money, and the 2,000 of it is, I think it's project management. So is the project management, once somebody's decided we're doing something, that they go in and do that, or is that something that we deal with later on? So I wonder if all those monies need to be go forward now.
And I don't remember, I haven't looked at that in a couple weeks, and I don't remember what that funding was. That 2,000 may have been for future, I can't remember. But certainly if we grant them 25,000, we will sit down and then itemize exactly how that works out.
Yeah, so is that the mustard colored highlighted, adds up to the 25, and the two last ones? Okay.
That's a good question.
No, I can see it.
That's a good question. If we can get some clarification on that, because if it's
Well, yeah, I mean,
25
we
or
will have-
27.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had said 25, and I think she will work within what we granted.
Is there another comment while I use my calculator and actually add this stuff up?
She has a range of things for different, that's why her timeline depends on what we decide to do. So if we say that we have 25,000, she will adjust her timeline according to what we want to do, so that she may spend more time up front and less time later. So that's why there's a range. So I'm not sure that,
All right, so we do have some questions or comments from the audience. Jill?
I want to ask you a question that I believe you'll be asked by the select board, which is how are you going to ensure that we get results for $25,000 on a timely basis, given your past performance?
Given our past performance. It's quite interesting. So you want to know how we're going to manage the contracts. And so Sally, the group being...
And the project, because the revitalization project, we thought, when we all had a great start to the project, and we thought we were going to get lots of public opinion, and we thought we were going to get so much for the money, and it's not really transpiring.
Well, it's not done yet.
No, but even though it's not done, really, are we going to go out to the community again?
Yeah, so
Okay.
if your concern is, if we approve this, then we really should have that plan in place as to how to properly manage and ensure the outcome of the planning itself.
I think we are set by the select board.
Right, yep.
Because there's a bad taste in their mouth right now.
Mhm.
The one project, which sounds a little bit similar, wasn't done for the budgeted price on time.
So I did mention that we already have, we've had a pretty solid committee that's been working on this already, and we are inviting more people to participate, and that will be the core group that will help move this process through. So there will be oversight. Jill?
No, I'm pushing you, and
But
it's
Jill,
not
I've done this.
asking this question.
Jill, I have done this a number of times. I'm fairly
So is
confident.
the difference that you're here? I'm asking this because you're going to be asked at the select board meeting.
I
You
think
come with a proposal.
I am willing to have my own personal stamp on this,
Okay.
that will make sure that it gets done.
I'm sorry.
I'd say that I think that is a difference, that Sally's here, and that's part of the reason Sally is here. We recognize some
That's what I'm
shortcomings.
saying.
And could I push back just a little bit on your comment about the revitalization thing wasn't done on time and on budget? It would have been, even though I wasn't involved at the time. There was a gap, space gap there when I wasn't involved. But it would have been on time if, let's call it, a misunderstanding had arose about what the priorities would have been and where they should spend their time. And from conversations that I had, even though I wasn't there at the time, there was a shifting of priorities
There was.
required by the select board.
No. There was
And-
a misunderstanding, Joe,
Okay.
that involved members of the
We'll
select
call it
We're
misunderstanding.
not in charge of the project, so let's
If
not
I
have that.
may, keep the productive comments and
Yes.
not an argument.
Yeah, I'm just
but
trying to clarify the point.
I think
It would have
that-
been done on time and on budget.
We do have, let's not fester it anymore. I mean, we do have certainly counsel from a select board member that we should have our ducks in order before we talk to the select board again about this. Correct. My question for Sally is the other people that submitted RFPs. Could you give us a name of the firms and a range of how expensive they were?
Well, we had, our RFP said 25,000, so they were all.
About 25, okay.
They were all
All right.
25,000.
It's funny how that works.
I mean, that was it. So we had the Center for New Leadership, which is Marlborough College. We had Peter Fairweather, who's in New York State. Julian Portia, who's with Champlain College, who I actually worked for, and I think he's great. And then Center for New Leadership is Marlborough College. And then another group that's called Lair Robinson, and they are from Montpelier.
So VCRD didn't,
In Montpelier right now.
VCRD had no, excuse me.
it's 32 degrees.
VCRD did not have time to do this,
Okay,
so we were not able to engage them.
great, thank you.
Hey, I have a question about this. I don't know if you guys covered this, but
Go ahead, Mr. Bach.
would it make sense if the previous group that did the previous visioning did this one?
They're not available.
Yeah, that was VCRD, and they're not available.
Okay.
Do you have a comment? Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
I'm just curious, we've got so many different groups that have different interests. Why do we need somebody to prioritize them for us? Why can't we prioritize them in-house?
Well, it's a fair question that we even wrestled with in a previous meeting to discuss about what is the role of a community visioning firm like this and a facilitator, is that it does help prioritize those different projects by using, instead of who's going to yell the loudest, by coming together as a community of individuals or from the whole community, not just the people that serve on boards.
Yeah, but usually the ones that yell the loudest are the only ones that are here.
Well, I think our last process that we went through this 10, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, was very productive or constructive in that sense, that it wasn't just the loudest voices. It got a lot of people involved in the community process that weren't involved previously. And that's, well, I think, one of the hopes here.
Yeah.
But it's a point well taken. We've already got people that are actively working on things, and they seem to be going in different directions.
I mean,
I think another, I'm sorry.
how are they going to get these different groups together and get word out to the population?
It's part of the process.
Okay, but I don't know what the process is, so I'm asking.
We have already engaged, we had a meeting here last spring with people, with actually VCRD came and did a review for us. And we had 40 people sitting in the room. And of those 40 people, many of them had sort of said that they would be willing to participate in the next process. And a lot of them were representatives from nonprofits who then can reach out to their members and constituents. So we have a network that's already forming, and then it's one of those things that we have to work on. And make sure that-
I'm concerned about getting it out to the constituents that aren't
Right, well,
represented by the
exactly,
nonprofits or by the people that are in the
Yeah,
group.
but the networking in this community has a lot of different levels, and that's what we have to make sure that we reach to.
It will only be successful if we do reach out.
Yeah,
Right,
Yeah.
but I'm concerned on how it's going to reach out.
it will.
Fair enough.
She also lays out a couple of her strategies in her response, in her proposal.
Yeah. The outreach process, facilitating events, creating materials and documents, developing plans, outreach kits, process of reaching out to the community, do more or less the actual outreach and interaction themselves, or facilitate with the group. So
Is
it's,
that proposal
Do
available?
it just as.
it is, it's available, is this available on our website yet?
It's not.
Not. I mean, it's,
But I can send it to you.
Beth, we have time for one more comment?
My question is, kind of like John has kind of already prioritized what I just heard was what he wanted to get out of, or maybe the three of you wanted to get out of the visioning process, and that seems like, the select board and the town manager and they were all municipal projects, is what I just heard, versus more broader community, not that those aren't community projects, but they seem to be municipal, as opposed to, I don't know, what?
Other, yeah.
Other,
Yeah.
right. Whether it's filling storefronts, whether it's developing the East End, whether it's developing the West End.
Yeah, no, let me clarify. But first of all, I think your statement is exactly right, that it is my own sense of one thing, of something that's needed, but it's only one thing that's needed. I would imagine that the visioning project, will define a scope that's much broader than that. I'm just proposing that and we don't have to accept the proposal, but I'm proposing that one of the 4 or 5 major outputs of this work be a clear statement by the end of say, the summer or the early fall, for the kinds of things that the town would fund. That doesn't, because the town needs that, the town won't fund any of those things, in my view, unless there's a clear voice that says this is what's important and we want to fund it. And so, and this seems to me to be a great opportunity to say that, whatever it is. If you like the high school, then vote for the high school. If you don't like it, then don't vote for it. But I would imagine that there would be 3 or 4 other elements of visioning, maybe that are more important than that, like storefronts or revitalization or outdoors or whatever.
You never know.
I just wouldn't, so I'm just...
Okay, thank you.
Maybe to kind of help me understand it, it seems like, or my hope, I guess, is that it's sort of two-part, and then things like the elements that might get funded, the projects, are kind of tactics to achieve the goals, the strategies that the visioning effort would start with. So the first thing is, where do we want to be? Where do we want to go? And then the projects come in after that. Is, well, what are the best projects to achieve those goals?
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Malik, do you have any further comments or questions?
Biggest question.
No, I think this is awesome. We should move forward.
Okay, with that, I'd like to move to a vote and ask that each member, because again, we do have a remote person, being Michael, to state your name when you vote. All those in favor, please vote your approval by saying aye. Mr. Malik?
Aye.
Courtney, aye.
Barry, aye.
Joe, aye.
Julia, I.
Charlie, aye.
John, aye.
Mika, aye.
And the motion carries. Okay, with unanimous approval. Financial report, so we're almost on schedule.
Well, can I make a proposal? Actually, the financial report is in some sense going to be covered under how to tell the EDC story, unless someone else wants to.
Yes, so the motion is to move number 5, if it please the body, to move number 5 down to number 8 and cover that. Sound all right? Okay. Great. And then we move to coordinator report, which again should have been available in the Dropbox if you've had a chance to read it. So opportunity to discuss it.
Yeah, I think last time Julia went through this, I'm not so sure. This is actually available on the town website, attached to the agenda, so that if anybody wants to get this before the meeting and read it, that's where you can find it. So I don't necessarily see the need, because a lot of this is just what we went and did last select board meeting, community grants, and updating folks on things that I've been working on. The housing study is done, by the way, and it is amazing, so I know, finally. But it's a great read if you folks have a chance to take a look at it. There are a lot of community comments.
Where is it?
It's, I can make that available. So we have to figure this out, because I have a Dropbox for the select board, for the EDC, and I will send that stuff to the select board as well. It's a draft still, so that's one reason why I hesitate to post it to the town website until it's
Just
been...
put draft on.
It does say
It does say draft, but,
So, I mean-
it just gets out there. And then we were just talking earlier about whether to have a public meeting at some point with the consultant to just sort of summarize it, get some more comments, see what people's thoughts are, because there's a lot of information there. And so, I can send you it's actually a fairly big file, so it's easier to keep it in the Dropbox.
I have a Dropbox.
I will send you a link to it. Anybody that wants one can get it. But I don't know about posting it to the town website yet, and I'll check on that and see how easy it is to do, and if they can switch out a draft with a regular one later.
That project was a large enough investment of time and money that we should have a public hearing about it, with Doug Kennedy from Kennedy Associates coming and making a presentation here, and have a special meeting just around that. So it's great information.
Yeah.
Is specific to...
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for attaching your report, because that was good to get beforehand. And is it possible to do the financials that way?
Yeah, and it's a good question as to how often the financials should be actually reported. I had a question about that too. Monthly
So
reported.
the question I have at this point, and things as people may know, that they're looking for a new town accountant. So I have not been getting reports from the town regularly, so I have, excuse me? Yeah. So the report that I do for the commission doesn't necessarily reflect exactly what's going on at the town at the moment. So that's one reason why I hesitate to say, oh, let's just put this out there. But John helped set up a really nice format, so this is available, and I think we can post it as part of that packet if people understand that it's not the official town one, that it's just our sort of in-house accounting of what we're doing. It's all public record, so it's not like it's, and I'd be glad to do that if you think it's.
Definitely not secret.
Yeah. Can I just, sorry.
No.
I was just going to suggest that it sounds like maybe we can take it offline, but it sounds like we've now worked out in my opinion, a workable technology solution for us as a committee. Like, we get the documents on time and we know where to get them. I think the next step is to make them is to have a workable solution for the public so that we stop getting these questions at every meeting. But it may not be posted on the town website, because it sounds like that's a problem. So I'm not just talking about the financials. So maybe just offline we can figure that out over the next 1 or 2 meetings, so that in the future it's just, we'll go to X.
No,
It's publicly
difficult to follow what you're saying when there's nothing to look at.
Exactly, which is one reason why, so for a piece of this today, we're going to have something to look at. That was a test. One of these things is in a format which is, like that report isn't, you could look at it, but it would be hard to look at because it's all text. So I think as we go forward, we need to aspire to more things more transparency in these meetings and more sharing of information easily so that people don't have to.
Yeah.
But it is operationally not, it's a challenge. It's a little bit challenging, but we can solve it. We just need to take the time to do that.
I get it. And I certainly think, I'm glad to attach the financials to the agenda and my coordinator's report. It just means I sort of have to make sure that I get everything done, because there is a requirement that they have to be posted
48
hours before the meeting. So that just means that I have to get it.
So on your report, I do have a couple questions. You mentioned the RFP in your report for the planning grant that
Yes.
would be going out.
Yes.
Has that gone out?
No, it has not gone out.
Okay.
But that will, hopefully, it will go out within the next week for sure. And they currently have an RFP out for a sidewalk grant, which I didn't know was on the same timetable. So we're
I'm
gonna-
sorry, you said that again?
The planning and zoning has a sidewalk grant. This is for the west, out by, the east end, out by
Oh.
the kitchen.
Yeah.
To extend the sidewalk from its current terminus out further towards the Worthy Kitchen, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
350 feet,
Yeah.
whatever that is.
But anyhow, so it will run.
Isn't that a football field?
A little more.
A little more?
End zones, maybe.
But yes, so that's the RFP for the updating the river walk study that we received in municipal plan grant.
Is there anything else in the coordinator's report? Michael, do you have any other things for the coordinator's report? Okay.
No, but I love these reports. This is great. Thanks for all your work.
Great, thank you. Yes, general EDC updates is next on our agenda. Promotion and website. I can speak to part of that as to where we are, but not some of the others. At our last meeting, we voted to extend the contract for the content developer, and the select board did approve that. We also approved $4,000 to pay for 6 months of maintenance with Origin, and the select board approved that as well. And we also voted to extend our current MOU with the Chamber of Commerce until March 31st. And the Chamber has responded, they want a shorter time frame on that, to go to January 31st to kind of keep the pressure up, because they really have to know for their own planning purposes. I'm sorry?
Pressure on whom?
On us both, on both parties, to actually resolve it sooner than going into February and March.
What motivates that decision, that they want it sooner than later?
I think because they have to do their own financial planning as well, so they have to know what their financial impact is of whatever agreements we come to with that. with the MOU conditions. Since that meeting, we have worked on a revised contract with the content developer, and that's not yet signed yet, but I think we've got through most of the things to extend that through 2019. And then we also have had a discussion with the chamber about what points are far apart, to at least let them know these are the things that led us not to just renew the MOU under the same conditions. And there was a lot more common ground than you might think. Again, it's kind of the specifics of the negotiations, so I don't feel like we can really reveal those discussions here, except to say that the Chamber and the EDC have much the same mission in terms of promoting Woodstock to potential residents, visitors, and businesses, and also current ones. So we certainly had that discussion, and I felt encouraged by that meeting. Julie and I were both there, and we met with Rich Kozlowski, the current president, and with Beth Finlayson, who is the current executive director, longtime executive director. So that was the basis of our discussions. So that's kind of where we are with it.
Why am I feeling I haven't learned much?
No, nothing new, because you're already on the inside. In terms of just, we haven't had that much over the holidays. We only had one meeting.
Yeah, I have a question on that. The contract, do we still have a contract to sign for the 6 months with Origins? Maybe check that with them. I can do that.
That would be great.
Okay. Usually they have us sign something, but I know we kind of were ongoing regardless, so.
Right.
I'll just double check with MJ.
Yeah, was it?
There was an agreement that actually.
I think they've already sent Phil something.
Yeah, well, Phil did sign something back, and then we kind of held back on it, and that's why there was actually a signed agreement, believe it or not, but I don't know if it was, whether it was a select board approval agreement, and that's why it never went through. I'm not really sure. I didn't understand why it was signed in the first place, so. But that's one that carried you through the next 6 months.
Right, it carries to the end of February.
Right. Right, which we're almost there.
Right, so we at least got authorization to make the payment.
Yeah.
We're pretty excited about that.
The other thing is, what about potential for marketing dollars to boost the website some more that we discussed?
So when we were looking at the original proposal, which was again, it's part of the negotiations, but we were not including in our proposal and discussions with the chamber large modifications to the website or a lot of dollars for AdWords or marketing that way. Those kind of weren't what we had discussed before. So it's certainly not out of the question, but really what our proposal was is how can we renew this and keep it up in content, really current, and really marketing Woodstock and taking advantage of as much SEO value, even though I know it's SEM these days, and what you pay for. So anyway, we haven't concluded on those discussions. We appointed a couple of members of the EDC to actually negotiate that, the final short strokes, if you use the golf analogy, on the contract itself. So that's kind of where we are, is defining how far apart we were. So when we looked at the counter proposal from the chamber, it was a lot more money than what we were willing to suggest to the select board that they approve. Right. And so we ratcheted that back and said, okay, here's what we're willing to do right now, and what is it going to look like going forward? So that's kind of where we left it.
Yeah, my suggestion would be something to consider as we're moving down is to possibly have an annual digital marketing fee over and above any ad sales that may go back into it. That can really help drive traffic to that site. Because the search engines are killing us. Google is killing us and making SEO extremely hard. So you're going to have to pay to play. And so we got to start really thinking about whether we want to grant to the website or grant to the project an ongoing annual marketing budget. And it doesn't have to be a ton of money, but
I would just say that I think that's very important. I would be very much in favor of spending, this is a strategy question over time, but of spending more money to drive traffic to the website. I think what's crowding out that investment is the money that we're currently spending to literally just host a website with the functionality we have. We're spending $25,000 a year on that, and I would be completely opposed to spending any money on marketing unless it came from that $25,000.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
Which is,
if we had $1 million budget, we'd be probably having a different conversation. We get $280,000, which shrinks down to very little when it comes to the marketing side.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think we have actually. So I think that's the trade. That's what we have to figure out. How to take from one bucket in order to spend on what I think is a more important bucket, which is what you're saying, is driving traffic to the site.
And when we had our discussions with the Chamber and with the EDC last month, I think we recognized that the money that we're currently paying for the hosting fees and also for the maintenance fees are really out of line with what another similar sized organization would be paying. So we can find better resources for that and maybe more local.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we are.
I'm very open to that.
Yeah.
How aligned is it with the income?
Way off. So way off. So the income.
So how aligned is the income to the operating costs of the website?
It depends on what you look at for two different things. One is the actual content development, which we've committed to, and that the content development and the maintenance of the website, those alone are.
And it's worth noting that the content development is not just the website.
Right, it's a whole digital program, digital media marketing program.
Yeah, you're in the neighborhood of $35,000 to $40,000 so annually.
Right, and so advertising revenue, and when we initially had these conversations with the Chamber, was $18,000 was the number that was thrown out. It is less than that at this point in terms of actual received. Initial budget was that it was going to be up to $100,000 in revenue, and then a working number seemed to be 40, but the reality is hasn't been there. And so we're kind of operating on the assumption in these conversations that it's going to be substantially less than even the 40, but even less than the 18.
It's just we're not actively selling either, which is a problem.
So and just trying to compare what a Chamber of Commerce website does here. Do we have any examples of a Chamber of Commerce that sells advertising with that amount of traffic that we have? And we can't really find a good example to glom onto in that process. That's kind of where we've been. That make sense? I know that because you had worked out a lot of the details before, and we hope that we can arrive at something that has a reasonable expectation for revenues that does not assume a huge increase to pay for the costs.
Can I just say that I did that today? I looked at a few websites across the country just because my priority is the calendar, because I think if we get a great calendar, that will also help with driving traffic, because everything's buried right now. And so Sedona, Arizona, Aspen, they have some very good, so people should kind of look at those and just, not that we need to change everything.
We did notice, though, you're specifically looking for a specific date and you're a user, because we can get caught up as a web committee trying to see everything at once, and I think if you're saying you're visiting here January 3rd to the 5th, you can easily go find that information on the calendar. So it's not as bad as it looks, but if you're looking for a time to come, that's, you're not sure when you want to come, you want to look at something more broad, that's where.
No, and I think that's this is a whole discussion for the website committee.
Yeah.
I don't want to go
But
there.
the options in the long run can be, a platform like the Chamber exists, you can have the Chamber manage the content of the site. That's one way. All of a sudden, you're granting back the site to the Chamber with EDC input on things that we would want to have as a group. That's an option to do that. Then you save money on the content manager side. you still, you grant a budget toward, you use those dollars to grant the budget toward some marketing and that web maintenance person to do some content management also. So basically updating stuff, doing an SEO, reconciliation at certain times a year, and then have a platform that's already a paid platform to be able to update things. So it's an option, it's something we've kind of batted back and forth. We seem to be struggling as an organization to try to figure out
Who batted back and
who runs it. What's that?
Who batted back and forth? You and
I've talked about it with Charlie, I've talked about it with the committee, I've talked about it with, the previous chair people, so we've gone back and forth on this many times, talked with Beth about it a lot, so. It's just, it's having that paid platform that's taking care of things for us.
Yeah, and we could take off the line about the specifics that we've been talking to the chamber about recently, and how Katie fits into that, or how the
Right.
So, Charlie, I guess my question is, what's next?
We have to extend the MOU. I made a couple of date changes to it.
Yeah.
It was instead of January 30th or 31st. Just
And after that's done, what?
And then to actually, there was a couple things that the chamber was going to get to us, and I think a couple things that we were going to get to the chamber. And then to move forward with the actual discussion about, okay, what does this really look like in terms of the specific short strokes? To set up a second meeting before January 15th, which is only 2 weeks away, less than 2 weeks.
So all that has to be accumulated and compiled and presented by the 15th of January.
We have one piece of the information now, and we're waiting for a second, and then to bring that to the group that will be carrying it out over the next month. Yeah. Does that sound fair? Yeah. Okay.
I always says at the end of the web meeting, said we're very generous to put a website out there like we have. It's working well, so don't be disheartened. It's actually something that's really nice. I think Katie's done a nice job putting some content out there. We got a lot of visitors going there, got a lot of people engaging in the site, so it's just, we have opportunity to make it even that much better. So just keep that in mind, that we've got something there that's working for us. There's a face out there people go to. So, and we do hear from the Woodstock and resort guests, they go there, they look at it. So, and we see growth in our referrals. So I'm getting more happy with it as a business person in town that's seeing some traffic.
Okay, economic resources. Nobody's held to their budgeted timeline, by the way.
We can hold to our budgeted timeline, if not a little less.
I'm a member, but I've only attended one subcommittee.
We had a short and irregular subcommittee meeting. One of the things that we talked a lot about was actually the housing study. We talked about possibly convening in the coming month to make a kind of, to synthesize some of the information, of the lots of information held therein, and do some analysis. We talked about
We had an early discussion about the sequence and process of grants and so forth, and came to no conclusion.
We came to no conclusion after we were talking about how to avoid the situation of the last grant cycle, where we got a lot of very labor-intensive grant applications. Is it better to have grants coming in on a rolling basis, which I don't think we're very much in favor of, but we talked about? Is it better to decrease the amount of the times per year that grants come in? What's the best process for that? We came to no real conclusions, but I think we'd like to come to a good conclusion. I think we're locked in for the grants for this coming year. We don't have any wiggle room for 2019, but moving forward, we are open to interrogating that process to kind of try to make it more streamlined and to keep a bottleneck from happening. We found that our other priorities kind of came to a grinding halt as we addressed the grants that were, the grant applications that came in the fall. So that momentum stall is not great. And how do we keep that from happening in the future?
I think there's a peak load problem we discussed, but there's also a question of whether the people are in the room at the point in time when we have questions. Right?
Yes.
Because basically the applications get presented twice, but they're only required to be here or even kind of explained to be here once. And so how do we do that without making this the world's largest and most complicated bureaucracy? Right. And we have not
And the world's
resolved that.
longest meeting.
A fairly small ones. Right, exactly. So more to come, I guess.
Although, well, there has been some refinement, right, with the application, a little bit more detailed application and better communication, better information about the process.
Right.
And again, we'll see
And
what
that may be
happens in
sufficient
January.
to solve the problem.
Yeah, and we'll see, January people will be applying with the most recent revised application. So we'll see what we get. If what we get is a whole lot more streamlined, then that's fantastic. That's one element of the process that we've troubleshot. And if not, we need to keep adjusting.
And I think we also added a few days between the application deadline and the EDC meeting. So hopefully any proposals will get to the EDC with a few more days so that you have time to look them over before the applicants come into the meeting.
By way of Dropbox.
By way of Dropbox.
Oh, good.
We'll fix it.
We'll figure it out.
We will continue to host our grant sessions.
January 17th.
January 17th is the next one. If anyone can join me, that would be fantastic.
January 20.
17th. So that's the next one.
Great.
And we'll see who shows up. If there are 8 people there, maybe we need to go back to 2 meetings, 2 sessions. If not, we'll keep it at 1.
So do we want to make an effort to encourage kind of a grant theme, if you will? We kind of had some discussion earlier and did make some effort toward a younger demographic. Is there a way for us to kind of help direct grant applications toward the kinds of things we had in mind for grants?
Yeah, I think that's something that we should tackle in our next subcommittee meeting, certainly. I think that actually, as we were discussing the community visioning process, it occurred to me that one of the reasons that I am very much behind this visioning process as an initial complete and total skeptic is that I would hope that it would help the EDC. I would hope that it would catalyze some high-quality applications for grants, that it would get word out that we are actively granting, that we're excited to get more applications. So that to get ideas in the same room as granting.
That might also be covered under number 8 too.
Yes,
That's
right. I was just going to suggest that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I've got kind of a new business piece, but I think I'll say it now, just skip from the new business piece, is that economic resource, we're an economic resource company, right? So that what you're saying is, I agree that more quality grants, part of that is just, it's this piece here too,
Yeah.
is thinking on a much larger scale of what our vision is and where we're going.
What do we need?
I feel like even I voted on a few things. I feel like a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction, just get some stuff out there and get things going, which is fine. I think we're happy with most of the things we've done. But, I keep thinking more and more in this, being market, destination market. Destination market doesn't mean about travelers all the time, people living here, whatever. But how do we get bigger than that? And how do we really drive people to be here?
This commission?
This commission, yeah. But I mean, that's bringing in everybody that gets involved here too. So I just feel like we've got to take a little step back, and I know we want to show that we're spending money and giving money out there that's doing right, but I think we also are responsible for doing the right thing. And so just making sure that we have some discussions that get, like, maybe this committee can start talking about
And
that.
fall, like Charlie said, under very
Yeah.
further
Yeah,
discussion.
how to tell us- EDC store is part of that, I mean, that's in there, but it's really, it's all, as you say, you know, how does the EDC do something more responsible on a much bigger scale? And that may be bringing a lot of partners with a lot more money, you know?
It's
So,
it's
yeah.
subject of I think every board meeting.
Yeah, well, I mean, I sit there going, thinking, you know, from the Woodstock Foundation to other foundations out there, people that can have a platform to bring money in to help the town out and create some more destination marketing dollars to make it work.
Michael Malik, are you still with us? We have to check on your, your
Should we take a pause?
capacity.
Pulse is here, it's a little low.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Good to know you're still with us. And if you do have a comment that, and we fail to see you raising your hand, please let us know.
Got that, thank you.
Okay, and we're on to our Civic Revitalization Subcommittee. Yes?
Yeah, first of all, maybe I should apologize a little bit to the commission for my uncharacteristic pushback. But I feel that a lot of people worked very hard for a long time. Mika, Michael, me, Ray, Beth, to get things rolling with revitalization, and there seemed to be some implication that we dropped the ball, and I don't agree with that, and I want to set the record straight. Now, as far as where we're at, we're waiting for the final plan to come in, which will come in February, the end of February. Between now and then, there isn't a whole lot to do. Ray and I talked about getting together with Beth and Sophie. I think Ray put a call in this morning and see what might be available in terms of grants. Because once the plan is done, in my view, if anybody else has a different view, please chime in. Once the plan is done, then it's a question of money, financing, prioritizing what the final product is. Well, let me back up a little bit. I think once the final product comes in, it's our responsibility to show it to people. I plan on going to all the various, trustees, select board, planning commission, design review, show them the whole thing, get their input from, what the conceptual plan looks like in their mind. And then come back to the commission and give a report of what input and what suggestions other people made. And that, I really feel it's a question of prioritizing and finding the money to address the priorities set. One of the things that disturbs me a little bit is reading the article in the paper, and it seems as though civic revitalization has boiled down to the sidewalk commission, or the sidewalk committee. And I think it's a much broader view than that, and we've been working very hard to make it a broader view than that. So at this point, we're going to wait for the final. I guess we probably won't make a presentation here until the March meeting, because the conceptual plan will be done until the end of February.
Does Du Bois and King anticipate having a meeting in which they present the final plan?
I think we have asked them that. I think that's in the agenda. It's probably part of the last chunk of money, isn't it, Ray?
I'm not sure.
That they will give it.
It was in the original.
Yeah.
It would certainly be helpful to have them available to answer questions
Yes.
about different elements of the plan.
Well, probably, I think it'd be too much to ask them to visit the different committees with me.
No, true.
But once, I gather input from that, and I'm sure Ray and Beth will probably come along with me, and when we feed that back to Sophie, she can probably come here and say, this is where we're at, and this is what we've learned, and this is what we suggest we do. I would guess in that vein. What do you think, Charlie? You got a question, Jay?
Well, no, I just thought that part of the process is, here's my preliminary draft of the
Yeah.
final report, here's gathering input.
Yeah.
I think that was what they might be doing, and then coming back with a final plan based on that.
Yeah.
So are they going to be the ones soliciting that input, or is it going to be the committee?
Committee. I'm quite sure.
Yeah.
I don't think.
I mean,
Is the committee us, or the committee is?
They-
you
they got-
you got us, the EDC?
The
or us?
subcommittee.
No,
The
it's
subcommittee, oh,
subcommittee.
subcommittee.
but they also got all the input that they were supposed to get from the community and from the business owners and landlords, so there wasn't much more to get. So they're gonna put that together, and I believe that's just gonna be the final.
It just seems to me
Product.
that what it's really going to boil down to is money. After everything's been assessed and looked at and the plans have been made, now how do we pay for all, what are the things that we'd like to do? And that's-
It would be great, given how things transpired with the contract and them going a different direction and then having to allocate more money, if they could certainly present it in person at some point in time.
Okay, but it's a good suggestion.
Anything else? Michael, do you have anything on that? Yes, Beth?
I do. I mean, I know that there are logistical questions, but would it be appropriate when that final document was prepared to invite the select board and warn it so it was a trustees, select board, EDC? So you're kind of getting a bigger bang for your buck.
I think that's what I was kind of driving towards.
Yeah. That would make
In terms of
sense.
just having one, I mean, we're already talking about one with a housing study. Do we need to have a separate discussion so you don't have to go around to everybody's meeting?
You know, and I think what it's going to come down to is, for them to do that, they've got to get paid. So, if they absorb the 6750 or whatever it was we gave last round in finalizing the conceptual plan, then, I don't know if they're going to require being paid. And that's where my hesitation is, because that's something I'm going to have to talk to Sophie a bit
About
about.
to present the plan that we asked them to do.
Yeah, that should be part of the deal.
Yeah.
They should know that now, so they can figure out how
And
to
that was
make
written in-
67.
In the
that work.
proposal, I can see it in the line, that it, that final presentation was supposed to be in.
Yeah, that would be, seems reasonable. I think any consultant worth their salt would want to present it in person.
Yeah.
Does it make sense
Yeah,
for
that was
them?
part of the initial plan anyway.
Yeah,
What about the presentation being at, or just prior to a select board meeting with the planning and the village trustees being invited?
it would be helpful if we could coordinate all that.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we can take that up.
That'd be awesome.
We can handle that.
Good idea.
If we need a larger space, let me know if we can make it work.
All right.
Over there.
Cool. Great, thank you. And recreation assets. As we had alluded to before, the trail loop, or loop trail, sorry, committee had met, and remember the planning grant was in response to Sally's efforts to identify some grant money that the Recreation Trail Committee could take advantage of. Remember, we do have some preliminary approval from landowners, and largest landowner being the Woodstock Foundation. Since then, I have had discussions with the Condominium Association of Sunset Farms. They're going to bring it to their board meeting in February, the concept of going across their property. The remaining landowners we need to talk to for this initial trail idea are really the town of Woodstock and the village of Woodstock. So I'm hoping that we can get their approval, but we need to have that serious conversation with them about having an easement across land that the sewage treatment plant actually considers to be in their purview. So anyway, so those are the two final discussions. The planning grant is really going to help us determine where that path actually could be, the construction, the profile, everything else. We had a meeting with Randy Richardson, who is from the Upper Valley Trails Alliance. He actually lives in Woodstock. It's great to have him locally. And he said that he could actually help in bringing some of his experience and the organization's experience in terms of easements and planning and some of the other funding that may be available or required to do this type of project. So it's very encouraging to have that discussed. That's the update on that.
Cool.
All All right, we have under other business, how to tell the Edie story, and I'm sorry the popcorn is gone because this is quite a great movie, the slideshow that John Spector has prepared for us.
You know, a lot of what we've just.
John, was that you swimming in the water?
No. At a couple points in this meeting, and certainly in prior meetings, we've talked about communicating. And I know Courtney, you expressed some questions about whether we're approving exactly the right things and so forth, and we need to step back. And I agree with all that. As a new member of the commission, the newest member of the commission, I think I have those same questions. However, I really think that in looking back over what I understand, at least to the history of the commission and what we've done in the last few years, we really do have a positive story to tell. It's not perfect. Nobody knows exactly how to revitalize small local communities. In fact, there was a great article in the New York Times Magazine section about economists across the country who basically say, nobody knows how to do it. We're just experimenting. And I think we're doing a very credible job at trying, trying to stay focused on Woodstock's economic development. I really think we're at a tipping point where if we don't start communicating and not just telling our story overall, but reaching out and saying these are the results of the housing project, and these are the results of the visioning. This is what the visioning project is that we're going to now undertake, and here's what the revitalization project has done. We have really good work that's coming to fruition and launching, and I think we need to have we need to have a communications program. Barry, this was your idea 2 months ago that you said we really need this, which is what got me thinking about it at least. So I will give you, if you agree with this, I'll give you the credit. If you don't, then
Thanks for running with it.
you don't.
You want to wait till the end.
Yeah, right. So having said that, this is just the piece, which is what has the EDC been doing. It isn't the piece, but I think we should have an integrated communication plan that includes housing revitalization and visioning at least. So, and maybe recreation and so forth. I mean, what we've been doing. This is sort of at a higher level. There are two ways of doing this, right? One is to, thank you. One is to circulate this and get lots of feedback and get agreement and then present something that everyone is somewhat familiar with. I took the other approach, which is I have no input from anybody. I just wrote this. And so therefore, you could look at it and say, I completely disagree with that, and that's fine. So my idea would be that we just share it now, we take 10 minutes, go through it, and then we start a process over the next couple meetings of getting input, shaping it, changing it, and so forth, so that a few months from now, we're ready to go out publicly and say, this is what the EDC's been doing.
Should we wait for Julian or not, or what do you think?
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm happy.
We're not sure how long she'll be gone.
Yeah.
She's seen a copy of it.
Yeah.
Does Michael have this?
Shoot, Michael.
I can send it.
Yeah.
I don't have the most recent one.
Okay, I'll send it to you, Michael.
You have a copy of it. Yeah, I apologize. The technology broke down at this point. Normally you'd be able, you can't see us, right, Michael? You're not on the computer. And I think the camera system has long, it's long stopped working, so.
I can FaceTime them if that helps.
Well, actually,
unless you can
if there's a Facebook, we're streaming this. Macy is streaming it.
Oh.
Can you tell him how to get to it?
Yeah, go to WCTV8.com.
WCGV.
CTV, Woodstock Community, WCTV.
Did you hear that?
Number 8.
Yes, WCTV8.com.
Yeah.
And it's streaming there, right?
You can get that streaming now.
You said it just like a DJ.
A little latency there, so it might be a little lag time.
All right, so remembering the caveat that I just made this up, right? Here's what I think the story might be. So, first of all, just telling people what our mission is and what our objectives are, and this is taken straight from the documents that we've written. I think the most important part here is we have two objectives, and, Courtney, to come back to your point, are we really, is every project we're doing achieving these objectives? And I think the connections are tenuous in some cases, they're not zero. Right. One is to increase the number of visitors who are most likely to develop connections to the area and contribute to the economy, and to grow and diversify the resident population to enrich the community and the quality of life. And I think that I wasn't part of drafting those. I think those are really simple, powerful objectives. And I think it'll be really helpful to just remind the community that's what we're trying to do. and it's not easy to do that, whether it's Woodstock or anywhere else.
It's also helpful to
Michael,
remind
it's on its way.
us periodically.
Right, yeah. Right, I understand. I'm sorry?
Remind us.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So just continuing on, and Michael, again, I'm not sure when you're going to be able to get to see this, but I'll tell you we're on page 2. So we've identified criteria.
You can only play video or listen to the conversation.
Oh, okay.
So I sent it to you by email, Michael, as well.
All right, I'll look for it.
All right.
So we basically set criteria to identify projects that we think will achieve those 2 objectives. Projects that need a boost in funding. Again, this is all taken directly from the website, but projects that need a boost in funding. We prioritize loans over partial grants. We prioritize partial grants over full grants. Demonstrably serves those goals. There are measurable results. There are long-term benefits to visitors, residents, and businesses. We give startup expenses for programs that we hope will be self-sustaining. We benefit the broader community rather than an isolated group. Demonstrably generates reasonable return of commerce relative to the grant amount. Some of these overlap a bit, but I think they're simple, straightforward criteria. We've also identified criteria, you've identified them prior to me, that we'd like to avoid: displacing private contributions or financial support from the town, paying for the whole thing, short-term paid advertising, recurring expenses, payments of wages, applicants, wages or fees, up and going events. That's what I think. Ongoing events. Is what,
yeah.
You mean like bookstop and stuff like that?
Yeah. Which we haven't adhered precisely to that, but we've mostly adhered to it, I think.
Mostly.
So these are the again, if imagining that this was a presentation to the public about the EDC, most people wouldn't know really any of this. So we probably should tell them. Now, you know what? This is not really, I think we can actually focus this. This was focused, excuse me one second. This is set for the focus of the wall right outside my bathroom in my study.
Oh, wow.
And I moved it to here, so it probably needs to.
Michael, we're currently focusing the slide.
That's much.
My study isn't quite as big as this room. So here's sort of the financial report, sort of merged in and simplified in a way that I think is one way that it's relevant. So through December, we've basically raised about $840,000. We'll raise another $150,000 or $125,000 by the end of the fiscal year. And of that, fiscal 2000, by June.
June 30th. Yeah.
Right, so this is through December. This is actually through November 15th raised and through December 30th spent.
Okay.
Right, so this is as much as we know. It's actually correct in that by December 30th, this is all the money we've received, because we don't get anything after November 15th.
Right.
So of the 840, we've basically granted 57% of it. 42% has already been granted and expended, and another 15%, 125,000, is granted and is in the process of being paid. So 57% has been granted, 43% hasn't yet been granted, and you'll see in a minute that that's mostly old money that we didn't spend and that we keep it in the bank. And you'll see that we're improving on spending the money in recent years dramatically, which is not surprising, right? We started off slowly and the money started coming in.
So, John, what you're going to demonstrate, what you're going to reveal here, the numbers.
Yeah.
Right? Now, will we have some kind of discussion about, well, we shouldn't have spent it there, or?
Well, let's come to that. Yeah,
Okay.
Part of that story is going to address that.
Good.
That question. So what I called it is, after a slow start, we're now on track to be granting the vast majority of the funds. So in the first 2 years, we granted 25% of what we took in. Last year, we granted 100%. This year, to date, we've granted 86% through. It should be 100% actually, because, we've granted 86% of what we've gotten through December, which means that we have to, if we wanted to be at 100% again, which we don't necessarily have to want to be, but if we wanted to be close, then we'd have to grant 110% of what we get next time, and so forth. Just a way of looking forward. I don't think we should be at 100. I don't think that's a performance metric to be at 100% any year, but I do think over time, either we should be saving up for something really big that's
Right, so
identified.
anticipating a grant we may want to do a year or two down the road. that
Right,
could be-
exactly. Or we should be spending 100%, one or the other. And I think we'll be figuring that out. We've made, now here's where I used some of my own judgment, we've made 5 types of investments, in my view. Improving the quality of life, creating new jobs, planning, marketing, and support.
Support meaning what?
Administration, the TV,
Okay.
things that you need to run the commission. And this is, we've double invested in marketing, and everything else is split very, very evenly. This is my assessment of the project. So it's actually remarkable. I mean, this looks like a pretty good pattern to me.
So what you did, John, you took this stuff.
I took that list and I slightly reclassified it. Those 35 projects, those exact numbers.
Okay.
I moved the classifications around a little bit.
Okay.
I like this because you can argue marketing supports the other 4.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think we can defend, and support is less than 20%, but it's not zero. You need some support, to the earlier comment about project management and so forth. I think this is a very decent, just distribution. That's why I think we have a good story to tell.
It's excellent,
Yeah.
What this doesn't do quite is it doesn't show the dollars leveraged from some of those support
No,
points.
that's a very good point. That's a really good point.
Say that one more time, sorry?
Dollars leveraged in terms of
Right.
other grants.
Yeah.
So in
yes.
terms of what Sally's been able to
Yes.
pull down in terms of grant
Yeah.
applications.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean matching grants?
Matching and just partner grants, whatever it is.
In other words, it's not 840,000, it's $1.2 million.
Yeah.
Or if you count the the Rainbow School, it's closer to $2 million, right? Because they had another
So generate X
700,000.
amount of investment into the community
Right,
overall.
yeah, that's a really good point. I think we should, let's say,
I got a question,
yeah.
if I may. Go back to the other slide. How do you, the new jobs, what,
Oh, yeah, so I'm going to show you
So
the
we're getting
projects.
there.
Okay.
I'm going to show you, so actually, that's the next slide. So here's my classification now. This is more of a tenuous connection, but I think it is a connection. So here are the 35 projects that make up those about 500,000 of grants. And I've look down the list. There's quality of life. Those are pretty clean. Marketing is clean. Planning is clean. Support, I think, is clean. The jobs one is the one that I think you naturally question. I've put 4 of them in there. Storefront incentives, the Rainbow School, the apparel, and the infant care. Because those were either in this case of storefronts, we're hoping that someone will come in, and in the other cases, they're going to go out and hire people to build capacity to.
Well, also people need childcare if they have kids and want a job.
Correct, and there's more benefits than just jobs, so you could say quality of life and all that other stuff.
Yeah, so are there any of the other categories that would show sustainability to the job market?
Optimist Center.
Yeah, I thought
I
about
would put
that.
Optimus Center in jobs, for sure.
And the student employment would be in jobs.
I would agree with you.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely, okay, yeah, good point.
I don't know why Wamba is in support.
I didn't, because I didn't know what it was.
That's
supposed to be
recreation,
remote
that's,
biking.
Oh, so that's
So
quality of
that's
life.
quality of
Quality of
life.
Okay,
Yep.
so student employment, those go to jobs, and WAMBA goes to quality of life. Okay.
Yep.
And pop-up co-working
Yes.
under jobs.
Pop-up co-working goes under jobs.
Yeah.
Those-
$300.
It's gonna shift us.
Yeah.
There's something for $210.10.
That was the job
That might have been the
pop-up,
pop-up.
because
Oh,
she
that
did
was the
spend
pop-up.
all the $300.
Oh, so anyway, and this is going to get Joe to your question a little bit. I think we should at some point take this list and kind of ask ourselves, okay, what can we learn from it? Does it work? Does it go?
Yes, I
So-
think that's very important.
So perhaps as a result of what we've done, trying to take credit without completely taking credit, we're experiencing solid growth, although it may be declining. These are brand new numbers. So on the left-hand side shows the options tax revenue. First year is a partial year. So the 9.3% growth on the right is adjusting for that partial year. That's growing by like 25%. But 9% is a comparable growth rate from 16 to 17. Then it grew at 6%. This year, it was, if you remember, it was growing. The first quarter grew at like 9%, but the first, or 6%. The first quarter is very small. The second quarter was almost flat. It was up by 1% or 1/10%. So we're now at 3.4% growth for the first two payments of this year. Is that a trend? Looks like we had a pretty good Christmas. We'll have to see. So when we get the numbers, we'll see. But this is still pretty good. I mean, the US is growing at 3%. Throughout this period, it's growing at 2.5% to 3% in those 3 years. So we're outpacing that.
Well, one thing I might add to that is that in the initial proposal to the town, we estimated $168,000 a year.
Huh.
Oh, wow.
So
Maybe it's even grown above that.
So it's a lot, and part of that is the resurgence of the Woodstock Inn and the occupancy rate.
Right.
I mean, that's the largest contributor to the growth, but
Yeah.
still, it speaks to the overall
The
economic.
resort's outpaced itself, so that's where I definitely.
I gotta ask a question about that. I gotta ask a question about that. Have you raised your prices? Is that one reason why?
Is the camera on? Yeah, I mean, you can, we would not, in a good economy, everybody's going up, but just in the nature of the industry.
Because it's 1% of what you take in if you take in more.
But, yeah, it's gonna cost us more to do what we're doing, occupancy going up, so. But, yeah, I mean, it's been a success story of several years now.
Okay.
John, I
You
don't
can
know if
turn
this
the
is
camera
a
back on.
place or there's another place, but I think it'd be worthwhile to compare at least our trends to the state.
Yeah.
Because I think, last time I looked, we were outperforming the county and outperforming the state.
Right, so this is...
Year-over-year basis.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point. It's a little apples and oranges because this is the options tax, right? So if there was a way, if we could find out, there probably is a way to find out what housing and restaurant, food,
Absolutely.
whatever it is.
Yeah, I've got that.
Okay, great, fantastic. Yeah.
We're so affected by the travel trends, it's something that this committee should look at closely, and one of the things that I know, I've been in this business for 31 years, that the resort business and the resort towns lag behind the cities. We'll see the cities flatten out first, but the spend in the resorts, that will continue to grow in at least another year afterwards. And so, so that growth, I mean, 19, I'm feeling very positive about this town and travel into this town. And I mean, look at Christmas week alone, it was insane. It was unreal.
I think as a commission, we need to be hesitant to take too much credit, but we also should take a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
By putting these numbers out and say, look, as the sequence of these slides are, first we did these things and now here's what happened. It implies that we had something to do with it. I think we did have something to do with it. Let's not debate how much we had to do with it. Let's just.
Well, that's why I think that comparing to the state
to say
trend, there is some basis.
Yeah.
If we outperform,
Right.
kind of basic economic trends.
Yeah. Okay, so Charlie, maybe you can help.
Hey, we're feeding the fire,
Could it be?
keep it going.
Could it be quoted that there's some residual results of the $70,000 we spent on a PR firm? Could that still be coming in a little bit?
It's the sidewalks. It's clearly the sidewalks.
Yeah, I mean, they were aiding in the process of something that was already out there a lot, so
I would honestly give Katie Berdan a lot more credit than the marketing people, although that was previous years.
Yeah.
I'm aware that the timing is different, but I do
Yeah.
think that the effort that has been expended on the website itself and its content and the Instagram accounts and
The what?
Instagram accounts.
Yeah.
Instagram's been great.
Yeah, you gotta remember, you had a website that wasn't very visible for 2 years.
Yeah.
It was
So-
visible. It wasn't as
It was
bright.
as bright.
Right. But can I just, I mean, I really have to say, if you're all giving credit, the chamber is somewhere in this credit also. That our marketing, I mean, our working with HGTV and the Food Network and the Chicago Tribune and all of those things are also part of what's, I mean, there's a partnership. And I'd love to hear more about that partnership.
That's fine. I don't have the history of it, and I wasn't trying to take any share of the credit from anyone else, so.
I think it's more than we, it's Woodstock is
Listen,
having
we
an
gotta
effect.
hold up Fossil Weekend, because that number is so huge to this town. It's such a big number.
Well, maybe a way to talk about this is to talk about, a couple of different groups, the EDC plus the chamber plus...
Well, there's Pentangle in
Yeah,
there,
right.
yeah, there are resources here in this
Yeah.
community that make it the hallmark community that it is.
Right. We're clearly not, it would not resonate well to have a message say, see how good the EDC is.
So I'll teach you.
So, right, okay. So then these last two slides are in particular, this is a little bit of sort of the outreach of a way of saying to people, hey, we want grants, and here's what we're doing, here's the way to get involved. I don't know if this is accurate, but it's what I thought. So if this isn't accurate, but basically it's just saying, look, this is how the EDC is structured, and we're seeking grant proposals from the community while we're also developing our own and we're not just seeking, we're also developing our own. So here are the 4 subcommittees. The Economic Resources Subcommittee doesn't develop its own, it really just responds to requests, and we want requests. The Marketing Subcommittee develops and implements marketing programs. Recreation Subcommittee develops initiatives, because you've already had the input from the town. And the Revitalization Committee is developing initiatives with lots of input from the town.
So let's say that...
And again, we can rewrite this to reflect what it really is.
In addition to grants, EDC is seeking community participation.
Yeah.
In those communities.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. We want grants, we want participation and input. Yeah.
Developing these committees was a growth and change in more recent time, right? We haven't had committees until a year ago.
Yeah.
So I bet if it's a year ago, most people probably don't know that these are the committees.
Right.
I didn't know. I'm still not 100% sure that I know. I'm learning.
You know as well as anybody.
That's fine, yeah. And then the last thing was to, and this is, Joe, where we get to the question. I've sort of gone out on a limb and said, again, we're not presenting this to the public yet, this is just for us, but here's what I said we're thinking about, which are really things that I think we should be thinking about and that we've talked about. We don't have all the answers, of course, so we'll continue to assess our progress, issues we're currently considering. Can we determine the impact? That's, the language is wrong there. Can we determine what impact the projects that we've currently already funded have had? Are we comfortable with the mix? Do we want to shift it towards jobs or away from jobs? Are we comfortable with the size of the grants? This is to your point, Courtney. Are there larger projects should we consider? And connected to that, should we seek to invest the balance of our resources that have yet to be granted? Because there's a lot of money, there's $350,000 there. Or should we preserve our capital to fund big future projects? And I would argue to us that these are questions over the next 6 or 8 months that we should, maybe this is our visioning project. Maybe the EDC, our contribution to the visioning project is to answer these questions over the next 6 or 8 months as part of the visioning project.
I wonder, John, would it be helpful to this process if we could get some sort of sense of how well the money that we have granted worked out in terms of,
Yeah, I think that's question number one.
Yeah,
First one.
Yeah, that's question number one, and I think to do that, we would kind of start with this page and, do something with it.
yeah.
I don't know if we ask people or,
Well, I guess what I'm driving at is, we've talked about in the past of asking people that we do give grants to come back with a report. That hasn't really happened yet.
Yeah, I'd like to
And
see
I think that probably should be part of the grant process. Okay, we're gonna give you so much money, and then pick a time frame, a month, 2 months, 3 months, get back to us and let us know how well it went.
I agree with that. We're not doing our due diligence, we're not understanding
Yeah.
how we really.
And I think that would help us
Yeah.
to determine, how well we're spending our money.
I believe that we did incorporate that in the new application, that they're expected to come back to come back to the committee,
Yeah.
the commission, and give a report.
It's been part of the grant, not grant, kind of the grant contract, whatever we call it. It's been part of that, but we've fallen short on
Follow through on it.
I think having Sally here is that's one of those things
Yeah.
that I think will
It's just time.
keep that.
We do have to put together a process and sort of think about how we do it, but, yeah.
Well, could we make this our visioning project? Like if it would give us 7 or 8 months, I'm guessing. to kind of address these kinds of, to do the stepping back, Courtney, that you talked about, and the assessment, Joe, that you talked about. And maybe we sort of say, look, our role in the visioning process is to answer these questions for the EDC.
And do we
that will help us
hand
in
these questions to these guys too? Say, hey, help us answer these questions?
Sure, we could.
Maybe it's too soon, but our cycle is June or July.
Which cycle? Oh, for members of the EDC?
Yeah. So
July 1st.
Yeah, selfishly, I'd like to see this through, and maybe we make June, end of June, our goal.
To answer these questions.
So, and then,
6 months.
would you have a process by which we might want to, we can't tackle it all over coffee? This is a few iterations, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, let's separate out the telling of this. This story ends with, there's some questions we can't answer. Yeah. I would argue that as soon as we're comfortable with this, I mean, I've got some good input from today. I'll get another draft and get it out before the next meeting so you can all review it.
Good.
I would argue that we should start telling that story.
Yep.
And then I would say it's a separate question as to
How we go through
how we go through it, and we should consider that. But
We can be like Shark Tank and do videos of our big winners.
that's right.
The phraseology I keep hearing is telling the story. How do we tell the story?
Right.
How do we get it out there? How do we, I mean, this is such a great presentation, it'd be, if it could be done, like before town meeting or after town meeting, when you get, a big group of people, this is where your money's going. Some type of mass audience of some sort. What do you think, Josh?
To that point, we have community television, we have the website, but we can't actually bring handouts with the town meeting.
But we could produce a report. I mean, we have a page report that goes in the annual report.
The thing is,
there's nothing that says we can't actually have a...
It makes sense.
No, but
to have a little report.
like the housing report, though. Nobody, I mean, what we always say in my business, nobody reads
This is
anything.
more detailed.
Yeah,
I
nobody reads anything, so what do you do?
Yeah, I think you use multiple platforms because you have so many people who look at, everybody uses different ways they find information. So you got 2 websites you can go on to. You got, you can do a direct mail piece pretty inexpensively. You got TV. You've got social media you can put it on.
Got a newspaper.
What about live reading? What about, I think we got the same question for housing and for revitalization.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, you know what, at the town meetings, every department has a spokesperson that explains what's going on and where the money is going, except EDC. I mean, they talk the highway, the police department, the school department, everybody gets up there and says. At the town meeting. But the EDC, nothing, ever.
Well,
I mean, I think at the last meeting, I said something about, don't you think you should know where this money's going? And, I said a few words, and that was it. But it wasn't part of the agenda. And I think probably it should be. And Charlie would do a great job at that.
Well, chamber annual meeting.
But I was going to say that town meeting is a presentation of the municipal budget, and we're kind of buried in there. So I don't know how it gets out, because it would be nice to let people know.
Well, why can't we find out how it gets out?
Yeah.
well, let's not just think about this.
Try to get it out.
What about housing? I mean, I think we've got the same generic problem or question for housing, for revitalization, maybe a little bit for visioning, for this.
Maybe it's a special meeting.
I don't know the answer. I mean, I like a live, personally, I would like, maybe we serve,
A live audience, like you
where
said.
nobody
reads
came until
anything.
you serve food.
Yeah.
Maybe we serve pizza.
Oh, we did. I mean, we had a East End meeting in here where we served pizza, and we had this room packed full.
Right, it was packed.
It was packed full of people.
So do we have to decide that tonight? No.
No, but I know a place that gets pretty good coffee.
But
I just thought I'd throw it.
is the EDC in agreement that this is a good representation of the EDC's work and good for
Yes.
public consumption?
I think it's excellent.
Why don't
Fantastic.
we
Very
start
good.
by throwing it up on
Very
the
good,
EDC
John.
website?
Thank you very much.
Can we put a PowerPoint presentation on the website?
Well, we don't really have a website. I mean, we are a page on
We're
the
a
town
commission.
website.
So,
So
sure.
I have no way to access that. So we could talk to them and see how much we can put up there. The problem is we're at their, the people, we have no control over how it looks right now.
Well, maybe we should try to think, I mean, because again, for housing, for revitalization, maybe
Yeah.
we should work on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if we
Well,
can
that's
change
gonna be on my
that,
note. Yeah, that's gonna be my
then
note.
we would have
Just
another tool to
To have it
coordinate.
up there in the meantime.
Yep.
You know, we could on the
So-
website do, since it's a partnership, you
So it's on
you
our
have, you have the chamber and you can have the EDC kind of announcement landing pages, things, or communication landing pages, we want to learn more information about each. You have to push something out that's more business to business, technical, or to community for the EDC. That's easy. I mean, we can do anything we want on the website.
Well, we already have a tab.
We do have
We
a
already
tab,
page.
so we can create another piece that's focused on,
Yeah,
that's easy to do.
yeah.
She's talking about the town website though, right?
Yeah, right, we're talking about townofwoodstock.org versus woodstockt.com.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we should should we have a temporary group just in the next month, just get together to have this brainstorming that we're starting to have now? Just
I like
figure out
that
what-
idea.
That makes sense. I would certainly nominate John to lead that group.
John who?
John Spector. But there should be some other folks that have some experience and interest in working with it. I will not be available. Is somebody else going to help John with figuring out how to get this out to the business?
Yeah, I'll be glad to.
Joe, Sal, here we
I will.
go. Great, done. Great.
John, thank you so much. for
Yeah,
coming.
yes, sir.
Great job, great job.
And if there was somebody from the Vermont Standard here, maybe they would take a, just kidding.
I want to help out because I think maybe I can get a little credit for it too.
Oh, Barry gets all the free credit.
I get my name on it.
That was under number 8, and we have new business. Is there any new business for the group tonight?
I don't know if this is new business, but I don't even know if it's the right platform, but I just had a concern about one business in town that's possibly going to go out of business, and it has a direct effect on wedding business. It has direct effect on bringing young people into town possibly to have their entertainment late night and things to do, and so, we're possibly losing an establishment that is a place that actually fits a role in driving business in the town and driving people to live and work here.
What are you talking about?
There's a business on the corner that is
Music venue.
leases over.
Restaurant.
Lease that.
Is it, but does anyone know what the actual status is?
No, we don't know. I mean,
Anything under the
the
rumor?
owner of the building hasn't announced anything what they're going to do.
I
So.
heard Maria was going to stay for another year.
Maria? No.
No,
That's what she told me.
not what I told her either. I think April she's done.
Yeah.
So, it's just, that place has been around since early 70s, right? So,
It's one
and
of the only
I
late
think-
night,
It is.
yeah.
it is the only.
And I know probably at least half of the weddings around here look at that as their piece that continues the wedding on through the evening. That we know is big.
Yeah.
So we know wedding business is big for, and it's not just for the one establishment, it's big in town. A lot of times there's 5 weddings in town and one's happening at the end. And then you think about just us recruiting young people that, they want
There has to be
something where they
like an
can
option, period.
convene and meet and stuff.
I just don't understand. I've been in this business a long, long, long time. I mean, I was making pizza when I was 8. And that place is a sleeping giant in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
it's
it's
a lot of
got
opinions.
the location, it's the cornerstone. Everybody either drives by it or walks by it.
It's
Every day.
a meeting place.
It is.
So
And to see something like that happen, it's
So
just...
from new business, I don't know if there's ever a supporting role we could have in something that helps the vitality of the town, that there's support and an establishment that can
So the questions would be, I mean, the EDC might have a role, this is my opinion, not
Yeah.
official, but the EDC would have a role if the building came up for sale and somebody wanted to buy it and ask for help from the EDC because it's an iconic
Yeah,
building, right? Or the EDC might have a role if a new potential tenant wanted to come in and have help that we've even created this will help pay for some of your rent for 2 months if you sign a year's lease.
Yeah.
So we've established that. So the question becomes, is a potential vacancy in a business going to be there for a long time?
Right.
I can imagine that that is a very desirable location, that there would be someone ready to, willing to step in immediately.
Exactly.
So
That's my point.
what role would the EDC play in that? Because I could think of 2 people to call right away that would say, yeah, I'll be open there tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm hoping not, just hope we don't have an ownership like we've had before where we're gonna have something sitting there for a long time because, you know, they may have their own agenda.
But would now be the time to consider the stick
Yeah,
option?
so I have maybe it's a discouraging anecdote. We had a guest this weekend who, he's an urban planner, and he works at a upper level with the Boston Mayor's office with their Economic Development Commission. They own some billions of dollars worth of property, so they're self-funded. They have a lot of money, tens of millions of dollars of budget. They've had empty storefronts on commercial streets, you know, with multi-million-dollar, you know, properties nearby, high-end products, and they've tried every carrot, every stick, and they're unsuccessful in filling empty storefronts if there are some intransigent forces. Well, if there are forces that are, you know, they can kind of encourage. If the difference is, you know, kind of tipping the scale, somebody can't quite afford it, maybe they can help. But if there's some reason why the storefront is empty, if the rents just don't work financially, if it doesn't work economically, there's nothing they can do to. They've been unsuccessful with all of their resources in encouraging owners to get these things.
Because it ties into tax code issues, it ties into a lot of topics that an Economic Development Commission is not going to have any power over or sway.
I think the role of the EDC at this point, with that specific piece of property, is a wait and see. That's all we can do right now. You just gotta wait and see.
I kind of just said it more for an awareness.
Yeah. He
was encouraging of our efforts. He did think we're at least on the right track in our efforts.
It's always hard to know. There's one thing just to an awareness, and I'm glad if Michael's still with us, that we have all of the members of the EDC here, which is great, because the select board at a recent meeting, and I believe the trustees were also considering a new regulation that requires, or at least allows for the potential removal of a member of a commission or a town governing body if they don't attend at least 80% of the meetings. So that is just, I want to let you know that everybody that is, I don't know if it's being voted upon or what the process is, but they are definitely considering it and trying to promote it. So, just as
I think that's interesting.
Have we advertised for another commission?
We were discussing about that earlier, and I don't actually know. I thought the town had gone through its normal processes. We had reviewed what the description of the position was, so the town could actually promote it in terms of filling the vacancy on the EDC. I just don't know if it has been done. Anybody have any idea? Anyone? No?
I find that interesting, Charlie, given that it's been my observation over the years, sometimes it's really difficult to find people to fill the existing spots, let alone get rid of somebody if they don't show up, right?
Well, I've had somebody approach me and said, hey, is there a spot on the commission? I'm interested.
Oh, really?
And I think the point is if people aren't, even if a commission is full, but people aren't showing up, what good is that?
That's
It's
right.
worse than
Of course.
I think that came from, I think a select board member observed that there were some consistent absences, and it was a,
It seems like a
I mean, I wasn't sure myself how to do it, and I just went onto the town site and I saw the application, so I told them, so I just fill out the application. But I think there's other people out there just maybe not sure. Maybe some people think they need to be asked as opposed to, hey, by the way.
That's a great point, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It may be, but just want everyone to know that that is potentially a new thing. Is there any other business, new business?
Well, what I was wondering is the EDC involved in Governor Scott's plan regarding giving residents, or people coming in $10,000?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
No, it hasn't been. So that's a state-funded plan approved by the legislature last year, and it's up to $10,000 over 2 years, a reimbursement of qualified expenses. If somebody moves here, the person that moves actually has to fill out an application, as does their employer. So it is only available for people who bring their own job with them. So it's really an interesting program. I listened to a radio interview with Joan Goldstein, who's the Commissioner of Economic Development today, and this program went live January 1st. It was not live before then, but it had been widely publicized when the legislation passed back in May, and they have had applications made already. They have a limited number of funds. It's $500,000 over 2 years.
Oh, that's
Actually over 3 years, I believe. So that's the total amount of dollars that are available. So if it's $10,000 maximum grants per person, then that's 50 people. So that program is now live, but we had considered it as an EDC, should we also provide some kind of additional sweetener as to residents to move into Woodstock, and we have not taken action on that.
That is one of the things on which momentum was slowed due to incredibly demanding grant applications in October. But that's a good thing that we should
I think so, yeah.
reconsider.
Yeah.
Absolutely, especially now that that's live, thank you for bringing that up.
Is that, Charlie, has the state given out any money for that?
No.
It just started
Just
January
started
1st.
January 1st, so they
I
just took
see.
the applications, and it's on a first-come, first-served basis. So the value of the whole program has been the incredible amount of publicity it has generated for Vermont across the world, not just in New England. So there's been a lot of attention to it, and like most public relations, as long as you spell the person's name right, they're going to be happy about it. So now the details are coming out. It's not what some people expected. They thought they'd just get 10 grand to move to Vermont. Not the case.
Just from our part, we did communicate it on both social media and on the website, so I mean, I think it's still up on the website as just to let people know that it exists.
so I'm forgetting, did we presented to the select board, is that right, for an incentive, but we hadn't,
No, we discussed it here.
okay.
We had like a brief discussion here
Got it.
about possible options and.
I think one of the things we talked about was like $10,000 a kid or something like that.
I think what we came down to is something like $2,500 gift pack, rest,
Gift certificates customizable to different businesses or
So kind of get
things like
get
the
the money
athletic
out to
club or
the restaurants, kind of keep the money in the community.
Yeah, so we've never decided on anything. I mean, one of the things we talked about, at least one of my concerns was, are we incenting people to move here from Heartland or from Reading? So we don't want to necessarily empty some of the rural communities just into Woodstock. Have we accomplished anything in doing that? But,
out of state bumpers.
yeah, so in designing this program, the Economic Development Department of the state of Vermont turned themselves inside and out to try to make this program to be fair and equitable and administrative. Yeah. So they spent months actually working through, is it a tax credit, is it not a tax credit, do we give funds right away, is it, how does it work, how's the application work?
I think our hope had been, as of like September or August, to come up with a couple of possible plans, including some, bumpers and restrictions and whatever, and bring them to the commission.
One of the other things, just other business and news, is that we did hear that the building in which the Optimus Center is located has sold, and has sold to new owners. And there was a possibility that the Optimus Center was not going to be able to continue what it's currently doing, its business model in terms of renting out one of its rooms for private use. And it seems as though that hurdle has been gone over, so it seems like Travis Hellstrom is still intending to continue on in that space at with the Optimus Center, so it's good. It is good.
Any chance the legislature might pass a bill to give $10,000 to people in the state of Vermont so that we don't have to move out of the state?
That was not lost on members of the legislature. Not everyone, yes.
Woodstock taxes alone.
And that actually was one of, you reminded me, that was one of the things that we were wary of. That was one of the kind of slower downers. The thing that put the brakes on our discussion was that fact that Woodstock itself is not cheap.
There was a huge amount of discussion about that. I mean, really, the biggest economic challenge we face in the state of Vermont is finding enough people to fill the existing jobs or anticipated job openings, and this does nothing to solve that. It's $10,000 for someone to bring their own job to the state of Vermont. So that makes it very interesting. It's a conflict with what the greatest economic challenge is for the state of Vermont right now. It's finding.
What would the money be earmarked towards, like, not like, you can't buy like a house, I mean, use it towards a house or anything like that to move in Woodstock?
It's qualified moving expenses, hardware purchases, payment for use of a co-working space or office space. So those are, I think, the qualified expenses in that grant program.
As someone who did move here with my own job in the last 3 years, I would have, if this had existed 3 years ago, I would have applied for it. And I would have qualified for it, and someone would have paid for my moving van from New York, so.
But it's
those are
up
all
to
expenses.
$5,000 per year for 2 years.
Yes. Right.
I'm not sure, right.
Right, for 2 years, so whatever. And if you have $10,000 in the first year,
So you can't, I thought it was.
it's not guaranteed. You have to reapply for that credit against that money that you spent in the first year.
Right.
So it's not.
So I mean a total of 10.
Total of 10.
5 per year, right?
Maximum of 10.
And it's reimbursement, right? They don't give you the money up front.
They don't give you money up front, and the employer has to attest to the fact that you are in fact an employee of them moving to the state.
Self-employed?
Self-employed wouldn't work?
I don't know.
I mean, if somebody was an editor and did it out of their home or something like that, would that work?
I actually don't know. And I don't feel qualified to answer the question.
Yeah, I mean, just.
Joe, you would have qualified.
There's a lot of information out there.
But it is on thinkvermont.com is the website where you can find all the information.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good answer.
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
Could I just ask?
Oh,
Here.
all those in favor of adjourning? Say aye.
Aye.
Michael?
Oh, he's gone.
He should be gone.
He texted to say that your presentation, John, was fantastic.
Thank you all.